Hi, welcome back to Lee Jasper Drive Time. Lovely to have you back with us. And now we'll join with our next guest on the Lee Jasper Drive Time, Neomi Bennet. Neomi Bennet was a young nurse. You may have heard of her name. She was subject to a hard stop. That's where armed police force their vehicles in front of you, forcing you to a stop in April 2019. They gave her a hard stop because she had tinted windows in her car. At least that was their excuse. She was eventually charged, and the charges were eventually dropped, but not before she endured a harrowing ordeal at the hands of the police. She was a registered nurse, and as a consequence of her being charged with an offence, she had real difficulties in terms of her career and employment. She's a businesswoman, a successful businesswoman. Her NeoSlip product is widely taken up within the NHS, helping those with thrombosis to live better lives. So I'm delighted to be joined by Neomi here this morning, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her experience and why she set up a new organisation focusing on racism within the NHS. Because what happened to Neomi led to lots of people who were nurses contacting her to talk about how they'd faced racism in their employment and jobs and work. And I'm delighted she's been able to join me today on Lee Jasper Drive Time. Naomi, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
You're well. Beautiful earrings, sister.
Thank you.
You're sporting the Africa Large on Ben TV. So, great for you to be here today. Now, April 2019, you're going about your business, you and a friend in your vehicle, you're subject to a hard stop. Tell us about that.
I think it's really important for me to say that although my windows were tinted, it was at manufacturer's standard, so they were legal. My windows had a legal tint on them. So
I think we can all accept it wasn't because of tinted windows you were really stopped. But tell us what happened.
Yeah, so I was sitting in my car. I had done a nursing shift that day, and that particular evening I had been to see my dad, who's a musician, play at a local venue, and just about to go home. A friend was just about to get out the car, and it just became surrounded. My car literally became surrounded by white police officers demanding that I get out, and the allegations just seemed to escalate so quickly, because first of all it started with tinted windows, but then it went on to stolen property, then it went on to illegal items, and it just went on, and they came at me accusing me of things that I had no idea about. So obviously I've said to them, I'm a nurse, I'm coming back from, I've just come back from a venue. I'm not doing anything illegal. I basically said to them, you can phone up the hospital, which is like local to me, just to get confirmation. But because I named the elephant in the room, and I did say to him, I believe that you're racially profiling me, that seemed to get him really agitated and aggravated with me. And then it became almost like, because I wasn't doing as he was telling me to do, he seemed to just get annoyed with me. Everything that I said after that was annoyance, and I said to him, I'm so scared, because I didn't know what they were going to do, and I could see a plainclothes officer who had obviously, I think they were tasers, but he was kind of hand motioning for me to get out of the car as well. It was late at night, and I was absolutely petrified, because I've seen what the police do to young guys in my community. So to be honest, I was absolutely petrified, but there was no proper explanation. And then I basically explained to them, and then I think where I was scared and I didn't come out of the car, they eventually dragged me. Two of them dragged me. One of them pushed me, the other one pulled me out by my head and my shoulders, and then they put me in handcuffs. And again, I was still confused, and then he was telling me, you've been drinking, you've been taking drugs. And so I said, basically you're feeding into a stereotype. Just because I'm black, you think that and that seemed to rile him up even more. I could see the anger. So I was standing on the side of the road while they searched the car. They literally found nothing. So I basically said, please, can I go home now? Because my family are waiting. And the ringleader, the main officer, says, you ain't going nowhere tonight. And then they just basically put me in a van and locked me up in a cell. So for me, that was probably the most traumatic part throughout the whole episode, being locked up and not really knowing what I've done. And they had me in the cell, and they kept coming to me in the cell saying, do you know why you're here? And I say, no, I don't. And then they would just slam the hatchet and say, okay, we'll come back. So it was like they kept coming in. Do you know what you've done now? Do you know why you're here now? It was almost like they did that to punish me. And I guess where it just became so intense, they actually moved me to a more lighter cell after I spoke to the doctor, because I said to the doctor, I really don't understand like why I'm here. And it was just so intense. And I think the aftermath of being in a cell was just so, it was so terrible. And even when I was in the cell, when I said, you know, can I go home now? They said, you're charged. I said, what for? And they said, you know, you didn't get out of the car quickly enough. So I said, okay, still thinking someone was going to wake me up, because I'm thinking, you know, how do I go from working a nursing shift, supporting patients, working on my business, which again supports patients, to be facing a sentence, not a sentence, but a conviction.
Yeah.
But anyway, to cut a long story short, they convicted me in Wimbledon Magistrates Court.
Convicted you of?
Taking too long to get out the car.
What was the actual charge?
The charge, they called it obstruction.
So you were obstructing a police officer in the execution of his duty?
Yeah.
That's what they said?
Yeah, but I felt more like they were, I obstructed them maybe from violating my space, because I hadn't done anything wrong.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then it took me another, like the whole ordeal.
So when you were convicted, you were then removed from the nurses' register?
They referred me to the Nursing and Midwifery Council,
Yeah.
Because they said that it was so serious, the allegation, that they needed to protect the public, because I disobeyed them. So I basically had to get a referral to the NMC, which resulted in no further action,
Right.
thank goodness. But my employer did sack me, or not sack me, but they suspended me for a month, which again is normal procedure. If a nurse is involved in any police dealings, in order to protect the public, then they suspended it, and I had to write like a reflective account.
So that was so not only now you suffer the trauma of the police intervention,
gosh, yeah.
but now your career's affected.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was so badly, because even like with my business, I run my business, and I apply for tenders to be on NHS supply chain, and in the tenders, a really important question would be, has any directors had any convictions? And you know it's going to be like not good, you know. So it kind of affected me in every way. And even while I had an appeal outstanding, when my existing employer applied for a DBS, it came up. That was before the appeal, and it came up as if this is a conviction. You know, so it was...
so while you were waiting for an appeal, even your employer, when you were checking whether or not you were suitable for employment, and they do what they call a DBS check, which for our viewers is a check to see if you've got any criminal activity, the fact that you'd been convicted came up again.
And not only that, the court continued to pursue me for the fine of £1,000. And then they went to my workplace, they wrote to my employer, and said, you know,
take it
out of my wages. And I phoned them up, and I'm saying, but I'm up for appeal. And the man said, you know,
you've got to pay the fine.
You've got to pay the money. And I'm saying, but where can I get the money from? Because you've suspended me from my job. I've been suspended. I don't have any income. So how am I going to? But they just pursued me. Yeah, it was so stressful.
And you did go to appeal. When did you go to appeal?
Okay, so the court went to appeal on the 22nd of May 2020.
So you had to wait a whole year.
Yeah.
And what happened at appeal?
Well, apparently they just looked at the case, a senior judge looked at it and said there's no evidence to have supported
the conviction.
The conviction or any of it. But for me, I kind of felt a little bit let down, because I was looking forward to having my day in court to say, you know, what made you come to me? Like, what was it that was so bad that I had to spend a night in prison, and I was convicted, and it cost me like about £12,000
in legal fees.
In legal fees, and so I was a little bit disappointed when I found out that.
So they just threw it out without hearing.
They just threw it out and said there was never any evidence in the first place.
So you've been put through trauma, taken into a cell, treated like a serious criminal, had your career affected, been hounded by the courts for a fine you can't pay because you know your business and your employment is suspected, and at the end. It's a damn squib, and you needn't even turn up to court.
Yeah, it was just literally. For me, I was so prepared for the case, because, you know, reading the police statements, one of the police said there was drugs in my car. I'm thinking, where am I going to get drugs from? I wouldn't even know where to get drugs from. So that was in his statement. And for me, it was like, I want to get to the bottom of this, because it was never mentioned to me throughout the whole hearing while I was in the station. But in one of the police officers' statement, it said there was a quantity of marijuana found in the footwell of my car. I was so confused. Like, I was so confused. But for me, going to court would have given us an opportunity to find out what exactly they found, where they found it, and most importantly, what did they do with it?
Because you've got to ask, haven't you? What you know? Is this the routine activity of police officers to invent evidence in order to secure prosecutions against black people? So the case has been thrown out.
Yeah.
You've suffered for an entire year.
Yeah.
And did you get an apology?
Oh, no apology.
No apology.
No apology.
No explanation.
No apology. And even trying to get the IOPC to investigate, they're refusing.
IOPC is the Independent Office of Police Complaints, just for those who won't know the terminology.
Yeah, so they're not.
So you put in a police complaint to
I put in a police complaint.
And what's happened?
Oh, that came back and said there was no wrongdoing. They were just doing their job.
So officers racially profiled you.
Yeah.
Lied about their circumstances and the rationale for the arrest. The courts fined you and found you guilty unfairly and fined you. Prosecuted you to try and get £1,000 fine. Wrote to your employers
and the NMC.
and the National Midwifery Nursing Council, and then didn't give you your day in court. I just want to say to people, this is the nature of the British justice system, and this is what we call institutionalised racism. It goes to the very top, and it spreads from the police to the Crown Prosecution Service to the criminal justice. Because Neomi should never have been charged in the first place. The CPS should have rejected that file. The court, when it heard it, the first court should have ruled it out immediately. And it's a scandal that it took a year for her to get justice. But having put yourself in the public domain, and we've seen you on many times speaking about your experience, you became a point of contact really for nurses who had suffered racism, not on the hands of police officers, but within the NHS itself. Tell us a little bit about that.
And I can say some with the police.
With the police as well.
Yeah, so it seemed like some of the cases that we was hearing was how NHS hospitals have collaborated with police to secure not even a conviction, but just to secure a tarnish on the nurse's DBS. So sometimes it's a complete allegation, fabrication allegation about a nurse, and it ends up on their DBS, and it does lifelong damage, where a lot of them end up leaving. So
you've just got to be accused of something, and as long as the police get involved, then it's a negative stain on your nursing career. Now you created Equality for Nurses. This is a network, a platform for black nurses. Where do people find that organisation?
Okay, so we're online, www.equalityforblacknurses.com, and also we're on Twitter, Instagram, and the rest of the socials.
Across the social media.
But I think what's really important, one of the main things that made me realise how important the organisation was when we started to do research, and it's transpired that 62% of all referrals of black nurses to the council, to the NMC council, who to me is a replication of the criminal justice system, 62% of those nurses being referredly end up with no further action.
So those are black nurses or all nurses?
Black nurses,
so 62%, the majority of black nurses who are referred to the Nursing and Midwifery Council for allegations of inappropriate behaviour or whatever, anything. No further action.
No further
action. So they're also going through a period of trauma, stress, and unfair allegations.
Unfair allegation.
It's absolutely outrageous.
Yeah, considering that black nurses only make up around about 8% of the register, 15% of referrals are about black nurses.
In total?
Yes, it seems that is making complaints about black nurses seems to be
cottage industry.
Yes.
Wow.
And we are inundated every day. We're inundated with black nurses crying their eyes out. You know, they've been disproportionately treated. They've been allegations have been made against them. One of the nurses we working with, she started off as a almost like a junior sister. And then while she was in post, she was offered a senior sister post, which was a higher level.
Yeah.
Once her employees caught wind of that, they started to sort of gang up on her and they set a plan for her and they trapped her and they encouraged her to leave the premises, because they all leave the premises to go shopping. And she was in her uniform, but she had a coat on top of that uniform. And they went and basically told on her. And it then transpired that their policy says, oh, you can wear your uniform in a petrol station, but not in a sports shop.
So hold on, somebody's left the building to go to the shop to get a sandwich or something.
Yeah.
And she's had her coat on. And apparently there's some archaic rule that says when you can wear a coat and when you can't wear a coat while you've got a uniform on. Right? So what they did is use that sort of rule that was probably invented at the time when Mary Seacole was doing the Boer War, or whenever it was, 100 years ago, and applied it to her now to get rid of her.
And
how long had she been a nurse?
Oh my gosh, she was like a super nurse, what we'd call a super nurse. And what they did to her, in fact, they demoted her back to a newly qualified nurse. She'd only been in the department for 2 months. She'd only worked there for 2 months. They demoted her back to a newly qualified nurse. They said, this is going to be on your record for...
how long has she been a nurse?
She'd been a nurse for about 6 years.
6 years. And now she's gone straight back to the beginning?
Yes.
For going out for a sandwich with a shop with a coat on?
With everybody else doing the same thing.
This is institutionalised racism. The Nursing and Midwifery Council. This is, how you reflect institutionalised racism. 62% of black nurses who are accused take no further action. It's absolutely outrageous. And that's why we need equality for black nurses, because they're suffering incredibly after doing a fantastic job in caring for the sick and elderly of the nation. To be treated like this is just unthinkable.
It's disgusting. You know, nurses come to us crying. You know, we've got a nurse that had been in practice for 20 years. Somebody, a racist, took her phone and sent a message to the rest of the team about the COVID and how she wasn't feeling protected. Now, that particular nurse, even though it wasn't her that sent that message, there was no evidence connecting her to that message. They sacked her on the spot, and they literally had security walk her out of the department. She's been a nurse for 20 years, and they sacked her for that. And this is an organisation that is predominantly white. So on that particular day when security escorted her off the building, she was the only black nurse in there. And that's how they're treating us. You know, we definitely wouldn't condone bad practice. You know, nursing, you know, it's very intense, and we don't condone bad practice, but we just feel that, you know, give us opportunities for training, you know, support us, and basically treat us the same as how you treat the white nurses.
Because there's a double standard, one for white nurses and white doctors,
Absolutely.
and another one for black nurses and black doctors and medical staff.
Definitely.
And that's why the organisation is so important.
And it's blatant as well. It's blatant. Everybody knows that if you're a black nurse, you are going to get, you know, you're going to get the full force. So for me, like I say, it very much mirrors what I experienced in the criminal justice system. But a lot of these nurses, they've gone in the job to do a caring role. They're not equipped to be fighting false allegations. Like, you go into nursing, you don't expect this, but a lot of them now are facing it, and they're, you know, but Equality for Black Nurses, what we've done, we've got some culturally sensitive therapists who are supporting the nurses. We've got weekly Zoom every Tuesday. Again, you can go onto the website and join our Zoom sessions on Tuesdays, where we talk a lot about microaggressions, unconscious biases, and just basically the way it affects us as black nurses, because we go into the profession because obviously we love what we do, and we want to heal and make people better. So these kind of allegations go against the core of our being and
teaching profession and vocation. Well, you heard it here, Naomi. It's been delightful to talk to you. If Steve McQueen is watching, because I watched Red, White and Blue with Leroy Logan being a pioneer in the policing service, maybe you need to do a film about black women in nursing, because Naomi could give you all the stories you need for an unbelievable plot of injustice and struggle. But for now, Naomi Bennet, thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
us on Lee Jasper Drive Time. We'll take a break and we'll be back shortly speaking to Patricia Lamore, so stay with us.